You are listening to a cassette recording of a channeling session from the Raw Contact, a series of 106 sessions that were conducted between 1981 and 1984, using a form of tuned trance telepathy. Throughout these sessions, a group of entities identified as Ra shared information regarding the Law of One, spiritual evolution, and a variety of esoteric topics through a series of questions and answers. The full text transcript of these recorded sessions can be read for free at lnlresearch.org, where you can also learn more about this audio and its origins. This recording is intended for personal study and is not available for commercial use. Please contact LNL Research if you wish to use this audio in any other way.
Raw, session number 90, June 19th, 1982.
In the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now.
First, please give me the condition of the instrument.
I am Ra. The physical complex energy deficit is somewhat increased by continued distortions towards pain. The vital energy levels are as previously stated, having fluctuated slightly between askings.
Can you tell me the situation with respect to our fourth and fifth density companions at this time?
I am Ra. The fourth density league of companions accompanies your group. The fifth density, a friend, at this space-time nexus works within its own density exclusively.
What means do these particular fourth density entities get from their origin to our position?
I am Ra. The mechanism of a calling has been previously explored. When a distortion, which may be negatively connotated, is effected this calling occurs. In addition, the light of which we have spoken, emanating from, attempts to be of service to others in a fairly clear and lucid sense is another type of calling, in that it represents that which requires a balance by temptation. Thirdly, there have been certain avenues into the mind, body, spirit complexes of this group, which have been made available by your fifth density friend.
Actually, the question I intended was, how do they get here? What means of moving?
I am Ra. In the mechanism of the calling, the movement is as you would expect. That is, the entities are within your planetary influence and are having come through the quarantine web, free to answer such calling. The temptations are offered by those negative entities of what you would call your inner planes. These, shall we say, dark angels have been impressed by the service to self path offered by those which have come through a quarantine from days of old. And these entities, much like your angelic presences of the positive nature are ready to move in thought within the inner planes of this planetary influence, working from time-space to space-time. The mechanism of the fifth density entity is from density to density and is magical in nature. The fourth density of itself is not capable of building the highway into the energy web. However, it is capable of using that which has been left intact. These entities are again the Orion entities of a fourth density.
You stated previously that fifth density entities bear a resemblance to those of us in third density on planet Earth, but fourth density does not. Could you describe the fourth density entities and tell me why they do not resemble us?
I am Ra. The description must be abated under the law of confusion. The cause for a variety of so-called physical vehicles is the remaining variety of heritages from second density, a physical, vehicular forms. The process of what you call a physical evolution continues to hold sway into fourth density. Only when the ways of wisdom have begun to refine the power of what you may loosely call thought is the form of the physical complex manifestation, more nearly under the direction of the consciousness.
Well, if the population of this planet presently looks similar to the fifth density entities, I was wondering why this is. If I understand you correctly, the process of evolution would normally be the third density resembling that from which it evolved in second density, and then refining in fourth, and then again in fifth, coming what the population of this planet looks like on third. Why is this planet, it seems to me that this planet is ahead of itself in the way the mind-body-spirit complex, or body complex of that, looks. What is the reason for this?
I am Ra. Your query is based upon a misconception. Do you wish us to comment, or do you wish to re-question?
Please comment on my misconception, if that's possible.
I am Ra. In the fifth density, the manifestation of the physical complex is more and more under the control of the conscious mind complex. Therefore, the fifth density entity may dissolve one manifestation and create another. Consequently, the choice of a fifth density entity or complex of entities wishing to communicate with your peoples would choose to resemble your people's physical complex chemical yellow ray vehicles.
Let's see. Very roughly, if you were to move a third density entity from some other planet to this planet, roughly what percentage of all of those within the knowledge of Ra would look enough like those entities of Earth so that they would go unnoticed in a crowd.
I am Ra. Perhaps 5%.
Then there is an extreme variation in the form of the physical vehicle in third density in the universe. I assume this is also true of fourth density. Is this correct?
I am Ra. This is so. We remind you that it is a great theoretical distance between demanding that the creatures of an infinite creation be unnoticeably similar to oneself, and observing those signs which may be called human, which denote the third density characteristics of self-consciousness. The grouping into pairs, societal groups, and races, and the further characteristic means of using self-consciousness to refine and search for the meaning of the milieu.
Well, within Ra's knowledge of third density physical forms, what percentage would be similar enough to this planet's physical form that we would assume the entity to be human, even though they were a bit different? This would have to be very rough because of my definition being very rough.
I am Ra. This percentage is still small, perhaps 13 to 15%, due to the capabilities of various second density life forms to carry out each necessary function for third density work. Thusly, to be observed would be a behavior indicating self-consciousness and purposeful interaction with a sentient ambience about the entity rather than those characteristics which familiarly connote to your peoples the humanity of your third density form.
Now, my line of questioning, I'm trying to link to the creation of various logos and their original use of a system of archetypes in their creation. And I apologize for possibly a lack of efficiency in doing this, but I found this somewhat difficult. Now, for this particular logos, in the beginning, prior to its creation of first density, did the archetypical system which it had chosen for its creations include the forms that would evolve, and in particular third density human form, or was this related to the archetypal concept at all?
I am Ra. The choice of a form is prior to the formation of the archetypical mind, as the Logos creates its plan for evolution. Then the chosen form is invested.
Was there a reason for choosing the forms that have evolved upon this planet? And if so, what was it?
we are not entirely sure why our Logos and several neighboring Logoi of approximately the same space-time of flowering chose the bipedal erect form of the second density apes to invest. It has been our supposition, which we share with you, as long as you are aware that this is mere opinion, that our Logos was interested in, shall we say, further intensifying the veiling process by offering to the third density form the near complete probability for the development of a speech, taking complete precedence over concept communication or telepathy. We also have the supposition that the so-called opposable thumb was looked upon as an excellent means of intensifying the veiling process, so that rather than rediscovering the powers of the mind, the third density entity would, by the form of its physical manifestation, be drawn to the making, holding, and using of physical tools.
I will guess that the system of archetypes then was devised to further extend these particular principles. Is this correct?
I am wrong. the phrasing is faulty. However, it is correct that the images of the archetypical mind are the children of the third density physical manifestations of form of the Logos, which has created the particular evolutionary opportunity.
Now, as I understand it, the archetypes are the biases of a very fundamental nature that, under free will, generate the experiences of each entity. Is this correct?
I am Ra. The archetypical mind is part of that mind which informs all experience. Please recall the definition of the archetypical mind as the repository of those refinements to the cosmic or all mind made by this particular Logos and peculiar only to this Logos. Thus, it may be seen as one of the roots of mind, not the deepest, but certainly the most informative in some ways. The other root of mind to be recalled is that racial or planetary mind, which also informs the conceptualizations of each entity to some degree.
At what point in the evolutionary process does the archetypical mind first have effect upon the entity?
I am Ra. At the point at which an entity, either by accident or design, reflects an archetype. The archetypical mind resonates. Thusly, random activation of the archetypical resonances begins almost immediately in third density experience. The disciplined use of this tool of evolution comes far later in this process.
What was the ultimate objective of this Logos in designing the archetypical mind as it did?
I am Ra. Each Logos desires to create a more eloquent expression of experience of the Creator by the Creator. The archetypical mind is intended to heighten this ability to express the Creator in patterns more like the fanned peacock's tail. Each facet of the Creator, vivid, upright, and shining with articulated beauty.
Is Ra familiar with the archetypical mind of some other Logos that is not the same as the one we experience?
I am Ra. There are entities of Ra which have served as far wanderers to those of another Logos. The experience has been and intuitive capacities. For each logos sets up an experiment enough at variance from all others that the subtleties of the archetypical mind of another logos are most murky to the resonating mind, body, and spirit, the complexes of this logos.
There seems to have been created by this logos, to me anyway, a large percentage of entities whose distortion was toward warfare, and that we had the Maldek and the Mars experience, and now Earth. It seems that Venus was the exception to what we could almost call the rule of warfare. Is this correct, and was this envisioned and planned into the construction of the archetypical mind? Possibly not with respect particularly to warfare as we have experienced it, but to the extreme action, to polarization in consciousness?
It is correct that the logos designed its experiment to attempt to achieve the greatest possible opportunities for polarization in a third density. It is incorrect that warfare of the types specific to your experiences was planned by the logos. This form of expression of hostility is an interesting result, which is apparently concomitant with the tool making ability. The choice of the logos to use the life form with the grasping thumb is the decision to which this type of a warfare may be traced.
Then, did our Logos hope to see generated a positive and negative harvest from each density up to the sixth, and starting with the third, as being the most efficient form of generating experience known to it at the time of its construction of this system of evolution?
I am Ra. Yes.
Then built into the basis for the archetypes is possibly the mechanism for creating the polarization in consciousness for service to others and service to self. Is this in fact true?
I am Ra. Yes. You will notice the many inborn biases which hint to the possibility of one paths being more efficient than the other. This was the design of the Logos.
Then what you're saying is that once the path is recognized, either the positive or the negative polarized entity can find hints along his path as to the efficiency of that path. Is this correct?
I am Ra. That which you say is correct upon its own merits, but is not a repetition of our statement. Our suggestion was that within the experiential nexus of each entity, within its second density environment, and within the roots of a mind, there were placed biases indicating to the watchful eye the more efficient of the two paths. Let us say, for want of a more precise adjective, that this logos has a bias towards kindness.
Then you say that the more efficient of the two paths was suggested in a subliminal way to second density to be the service to others' path. Am I correct?
I am Ra. We did not state which was the more efficient path. However, you are correct in your assumption, as you are aware from having examined each path in some detail in previous querying.
Would this be the reason for the greater positive harvests? I suspect that it isn't, but would there be Logoi that have greater negative percentage harvests because of this type of biasing?
I am Ra. No. There have been Logoi with greater percentages of negative harvests. However, the biasing mechanisms cannot change the requirements for achieving harvestability either in the positive or in the negative sense. There are Logoi which have offered a neutral background against which to polarize. This Logos chose not to do so, but instead to allow more of the love and light of the infinite Creator to be both inwardly and outwardly visible and available to the sensations and conceptualizations of mind, body, spirits undergoing its care in experimenting.
Were there any other circumstances, biases, consequences, or plans set up by the Logos other than those we had discussed for the evolution of its parts through the densities?
I am Ra. Yes.
What were these?
I am Ra. One more. That is the permeability of the densities, so that there may be a communication from a density to a density, and from plane to plane, or subdensity to a subdensity.
Then, as I see the plan for the evolution by this Logos, it was planned to create as vivid an experience as possible, but also one which was somewhat informed with respect to the infinite creator, and able to accelerate progress as a function of will because of the permeabilities of densities. Have I covered accurately the general plan of this Logos with respect to its evolution?
I am Ra. Accepting the actions of the unmanifested self and the actions of a self with other self, you have been reasonably thorough.
Then is the major mechanism forming the ways and very essence of the experience that we presently experience here, the archetypical mind and the archetypes.
I am Ra. These resources are a part of that which you refer to.
What I'm really asking is, what percentage part, roughly, are these responsible for?
I am Ra. We ask once again that you consider that the archetypical mind is a part of the deep mind. There are several portions to this mind. The mind may serve as a resource. To call the archetypical mind the foundation of experience is to oversimplify the activities of the mind-body-spirit complex. To work with your query as to percentages is therefore enough misleading in any form of a direct answer that we would ask that you re-question.
That's okay. I don't think that was that good a question anyway. Now, when Ra initially planned for helping the Egyptians with their evolution, what was the most or the primary concept, and also secondary and tertiary, if you can name those, that Ra wished to impart to the Egyptians? In other words, what was Ra's training plan or schedule for making the Egyptians aware of what would be necessary for their evolution?
I am Ra. We came to your peoples to enunciate the law of one. We wished to impress upon those who wished to learn of unity, that in unity all paradoxes are resolved. All that is broken is healed. All that is forgotten is brought to light. We had no teaching a plan, as you have called it, in that our intention when we walked among your peoples was to manifest that which was requested by those learned teachers to which we had come. We are aware that this particular line of querying, that is the nature and architecture of the archetypical mind, has caused the questioner to attempt to its own mind unsuccessfully to determine the relative importance of these concepts. We cannot learn to teach for any, nor would we take this opportunity from the questioner. However, we shall comment. The adept has already worked much, not only within the red, orange, yellow, and green energy centers, but already in the opening of blue and indigo. Up through this point, the archetypes function as the great base or plinth of a builded structure or statue, keeping the mind complex viable, level, and available as a resource whenever it may be evoked. There is a point at which the adept takes up its work. This is the point at which a clear and conscious consideration of the archetypical mind is useful.
I have an observation on Archetype 1, made by Jim. Request a comment by Rob. I will read it. The matrix of the mind is the conscious mind and is sustained by the power of the spirit, symbolized by the star, which flows to it through the subconscious mind. It contains the will, which is symbolized by the scepter of power in the magician's hand. All of creation is made through the power of the will, directed by the conscious mind of the magician. And the bird in the cage represents the illusion in which the self seems trapped. The magician represents maleness, or the radiance of being manifested as the creation through which each entity moves.
I am Ra. As this instrument is becoming a somewhat weary, we shall not begin this considerable discussion. We would request that this series of observations be repeated at the outset of the next working. We would suggest that each concept be discussed separately, or if appropriate, a pair of concepts be related one to the other within the concept complex. This is slow work, but shall make the eventual building of the concept complexes more smoothly accomplished. Were we to have answered the observations as read by you at this space time, as much space time would have been given to the untangling of various concepts as to the building up of what were very thoughtful perceptions. May we ask if there are any brief queries at this time?
Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact?
I am Ra. It is well that the appliances for the drums were placed upon the instrument. We ask that continued vigilance be accorded these distortions, which are, if anything, more distorted towards dis-ease than at our previous cautionary statement. All is well, my friends. You are conscientious and faithful in your alignments. We appreciate your fastidiousness. I am Ra. I leave you now, rejoicing merrily in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth then, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
All right. All right.
Mm.
They done.